Good day, Math Nation. Mr. Cornell here, ready to go over some equations of circles with you. I'm going to kind of dive into it. It's going to be very similar to the other lessons of our basic equations of circles. It just kind of goes into completing the square, which maybe you remember from algebra, maybe not, but we'll kind of go over that to make sure that everyone is on the same page. All right, so here's some exercises that we can start off with some polynomials you want to keep in mind. So here you have the polynomial x squared plus 2x plus 1, and then in factored form we wrote x plus 1 squared. Now why that works is if you're doing x plus 1 times x plus 1, if you factored that out, you'd have x squared plus 1x plus 1x plus 1 by doing that distributive property 2 times. Combining like terms, you end up with the x squared plus 2x plus 1. So what's basically happening is you're kind of just taking the square root of this c term here. Because, watch when I do it here, you have the square root of 4, which is 2. So here 2 times 2 is 4, and 2 plus 2 is 4. So the factored form here would be x plus 2 squared. All right? Here, so what we're looking at is these are perfect square trinomials. So here the square root of 9 is 3, so now we're going to be using a 3. Now with the examples we just used above, everybody was positive, so that's why we had a positive here. But 3 times 3 is 9, so that gives us this. Now 3 and 3 is 6. Now since I want a negative 6, this is going to be a minus 3. So that's how you're going to know when you're going to have a positive or you're going to have a negative. Here, if I'm going to create that now, you would just take this term here, positive 4 and positive 4 is positive 8, and positive 4 times positive 4 is positive 16, and there's your perfect square trinomial. Continue down, x minus 7 squared, negative 7 and negative 7, adding them gives you a negative 14, and negative 7 times negative 7 is a positive 49. And then the last one working backwards again, the square root of 100 is 10, and then since we need a negative 20, that is accomplished by doing a minus 10 and a minus 10. So it's x minus 10 squared. So these are perfect square trinomials, and that's going to kind of help us with the form that we're going to look at today. So we learned the standard form of an equation of a circle was x minus a squared plus y minus b squared is equal to r squared. Remember, the a and the b, you're supposed to change their signs, and that's what gives you the center. And then here you square root that radius squared, and that would give you the radius. Keep in mind, if there is just an x squared and a y squared, like this part doesn't exist, remember that the center is at the origin at 0, 0. So we're going to take a look at what happens to equations of circles when it's not just an x squared and a y squared, like this example over here, but all of a sudden, say it's x squared plus 3x. How am I going to find a circle from something like this, okay? And that's where this perfect square trinomial stuff comes from in here. Now, what you want to kind of keep in mind is we're going to be completing the square. Now, to complete the square, what you're going to do is b divided by 2 squared. That's the formula. Now, in doing that, you're going to be taking, say, a question like this and creating a perfect square trinomial like this guy here. Now, when you have a perfect square trinomial, you can create the factored form to look like that, and that now puts us back into standard form. So you see that? Math and why it's so great and awesome. Everything can kind of tie back into each other. So keep this in mind, and this is kind of when you're going to know what to do. All right? So let's take a look at the first question here. So the first thing that jumps out at me in this question is it's a mess. It's a really long, crazy mess. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of just try to separate it or group the things, everything together. I want to try to put all the x's together, the y's together, and then it equals all the constants on the other side. And what I mean by that, okay, if you look at this, okay, you have this here, you have this there, and then you have the 36. Now, you can move this 4 over and 9 over. But for this first kind of example, if you look carefully at it, this is one of those examples up above. That's a perfect square trinomial. And if you do that, I know that because if I took that, that becomes the factored form of x plus 2 squared. Again, so just again, the whole reason why I have that is if I actually sat there and did the math and I proved it to you and did the distributive property, you're going to get x squared plus 2x plus 2x plus 4 is x squared plus 4x plus 4. So you're basically turning this into that. Here, that's what we looked at earlier. That's y minus 3 squared. 3 times 3 is 9, and negative 3 and negative 3 is negative 6. Now that all equals 36. So if you kind of step back for a second and look at what we just did there, if I do this, this should be familiar to you. That's the standard form of a circle. So the question said find the center and the radius. Well, take this out, change his sign. Take this out and change his sign. And then the radius, you take the square root of that. So there you go. There's your center, and there's your radius. So I would just take a second, I would rewind, watch that part again, just to make sure that it makes complete sense to you. And if you feel like you have it, try the next one, B, and then hit play. Alright, so again, I can separate this because I notice right away that these two guys are perfect square trinomials because the square root of 25 is 5, the square root of 49 is 7. So if I'm going to now put that into my standard form of a circle, since it's a negative 10, it's going to be a minus 5, because minus 5 and minus 5 is minus 10. Since it's a positive 14, it's going to be a positive 7. Now the center, change the signs, so it's going to be 5 comma negative 7. Take the square root of 4, and the radius is 2. Alright, so there's kind of your basic introduction, and that's what we're going to create from the newer questions that we're going to get to now. So now if you take a look at this one, and you're going to notice right away how it's different. These are not perfect square trinomials. Notice I'm good here because the x's are grouped together. I'm good here because the y's are grouped together. And then there's my constant over there. But it's not a perfect square trinomial. A trinomial has 3. There's only 2 terms there. Now this is where completing the squares come in. I can turn this into a perfect square trinomial. How? By doing b divided by 2 squared. Remember, ax squared, bx, and c, that's your standard form of a trinomial. So the b is the number with the x. So the number with the x here is a positive 4. Now that's important. So I'm going to do positive 4 divided by 2 squared. What I'm not going to do is I'm not going to put that into my calculator. Positive 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 2 squared is 4. Now here's how the whole game works. You take this final term here. That term is always going to be positive, and that's why these parentheses are important. I'm going to add that to both sides. Now, in doing that, I end up with x squared plus 4x plus 4. If you remember from earlier, that's a perfect square trinomial. Another thing that I like to say, that kind of like a helpful hint, is this, if you did it right, that's just going to be what goes there. And that's why the sign is really important. So this is x plus 2 squared over here. All right, so that takes care of my x's. So now if you're a little lost, watch, because I'm going to do the exact same thing for the y's. So I'm going to do it over here, but it's nice to kind of, if you could fit it in the box, that's great too. The formula to create a perfect square trinomial is b divided by 2 squared. The b value is negative 12. Negative 12 divided by 2 is negative 6, and negative 6 squared is positive 36. Now this is why I said the parentheses are important, because if you did negative 6 squared in your calculator without parentheses, it's going to give you negative 36. So now we're going to add that to both sides. Okay? This will be important in a little bit. What that created is y squared minus 12y plus 36. Now remember I said this is basically kind of your cheat if you did everything right? This is just going to be y minus 6 squared. Okay? Now you're going to go ahead, you're going to add up all of this value over here, the c's, and that's going to give you 81. So the question said find the center and the radius. Look carefully at what we just did. What we just did there was we created the standard form of a circle. X plus 2 squared, y minus 6 squared equals 81. Now you take the center, change its sign so it's -2, +6. Take the radius, square root the 81, so the radius is 9. And that's how you do it. That's how you take that equation there, create your perfect square trinomials, and then get your center and radius from there. Now let's take a look at this one. Okay, could the circle of the equation have a radius of 4, why or why not? So basically we're going to have to kind of do the same thing. Now I'm going to do this one the same, but I'm going to try to skip steps, make it a little bit easier. Here I showed every single step. So the first thing I want to do is make sure I have all my x's grouped like this, and now my y's grouped. Now this is -7, so notice how it's different. So, and this is not anything special at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of that 7, and I'm going to change his sign, and I'm going to write equals 7. So now I have all my x's on my left and with my y's, and I have that 7 on the other side. This is a perfect, I have to make a perfect square trinomial. There's nothing I can do with that. Well, what about this y? He's all alone. What happens when you have an x squared or a y squared all alone? What did that mean? I showed you before. What it meant was that the value was 0. So that's the y, the value is going to be 0. So I don't have to do anything to that guy there. Now we're going to go over here. We're going to create a trinomial so I can put it in this form up here. So I'm going to do b divided by 2 squared, -6 divided by 2 squared, -3 squared, and 9. Now remember, this last value gets added to both sides. And like I said before, I'm going to try to shorten this up a little bit. So I'm going to add 9. Now up here I put +9. I created that perfect square trinomial, and then I showed the factor. What I like to say is, well, you're doing everything right. Just take this and put it here. That y squared stayed the same. And then it's here you have 7 plus 9. So my equation is going to be x minus 3 squared, y squared equals 16. This is the circle. What's the question? Will the radius be 4? Well, this is where I get my radius from. The square root of 16 is 4, so yes it is. And there you go. Showed all my work. Showed how it is, that's the equation, so that must be its radius, so the radius is 4. All right. Example 4. A circle with a center of 2, -5 is tangent to the x-axis. What is the radius of this circle? Well, let me show you what that even means. So if I'm going to graph 2, -5, this is the center. And then it says is tangent to the x-axis. Well, remember what a tangent means is a tangent is a line that hits a circle in only one spot. Now this here is my x-axis. So wherever the circle is being drawn, I have to hit that one single time. So basically, I can only hit in one spot. So the circle, very ugly drawn circle, would look something like that because I am now tangent to the x-axis. Question 1. What is the radius of this circle? Well, count this distance here. The distance from there to there is 5, so the radius is 5. What is the equation of the circle? To find an equation, I need the center, and I need the radius. So what I do, remember, you change the sign of the center, so that's x minus 2 squared, y plus 5 squared equals 5 squared. And you could always take it one step further and write 25. So there you go. All right. Keep it going. 2 more left. Here we go. Given a circle centered at the origin. Ooh, that's an easy one. And then goes through the point 0, 2, determine whether or not this circle would also go through the point 1, comma 3. So what the easiest thing to do would be to draw that circle. Don't get ahead of yourself. Draw the axes first. So this is the center, and it goes through the point 0, 2. So, well, that must be the radius there. So this is what your circle looks like. So the center is 0, comma 0, 0, and the radius is 2. Now I want to know, is the point 1 radical 3 in there? So what you would do is you'd want to substitute that into the equation and see if it works. So create an equation using those numbers. Since I'm at the origin, I'm x squared plus y squared, and the radius is 2. So there's the equation. Now substitute it in. 1 squared plus radical 3 squared should be equal to 4, which is 2 squared. And if it's true, then the answer is yes. If it's false, then the answer is no. 1 squared is 1. The square root of 3 squared is 3. 1 plus 3 is 4, so 4 is equal to 4. So yes, the point 1 comma radical 3 is on the circle. Last, but certainly not least, maybe I'll start it for you so you guys can make sure you're starting off right. Maybe hit pause, try it yourself. Probably not, but it's fun to say. All right, here, group together. You're good to go. Now, take a look at this. This is what's grouped here. Is this a perfect square trinomial? No, good. Why? Because the square root of 8 is not a perfect number. So you got to get rid of that 8. So move him to the other side. So it's going to be equal to positive 8 because I changed his sign. Now he's over there. Now this is the part where I'd say pause. Try to create your two perfect square trinomials, and don't forget to add, and see if you could come up with the equation to find the center and the radius. All right. Welcome back. So here we go. 10 divided by 2 squared is 5 squared, which is 25. Remember, this guy here is the factored form of the perfect square trinomial you created by adding 25 to both sides. Then we try with this guy. Negative 8 divided by 2 squared is negative 4 squared, which is positive 16. This is going to be y minus 4 squared, and don't forget you have to add the 16. Now we can go ahead, write my equation, x plus 5 squared, y minus 4 squared equals 49. We're really moving on an angle here, but we're doing it. So that means that the center, change the signs, are going to be negative 5, positive 4. Then your radius is going to be the square root of 49, which is 7. And we have done it. Hope that this was helpful for you. If you did find it helpful, like, subscribe, tell your friends, leave a comment. Have a great day.